of you here. Some of us met earlier this morning. And if there is someone who wants to join us for our event, our conference, this afternoon, you're more than welcome to do so. We will be at Gamla Kyrkan in room 236. But I hope that you have had some time to get some lunch in the sun, and that you are ready for our first keynote speaker. And it is my very great honor to introduce to you Professor Andrea Pето. And Andrea Pето is a historian and professor at the Department of Gender Studies at Central European University in Vienna, Austria, and a Doctor of Science of the Hungarian Academy of Sciences. And she has long been a very influential researcher and a leading thinker and intellectual, and has published extensively, very extensively, on topics such as gender, politics, the Holocaust, and war. And her work has been translated to 23 languages, which is amazing. And she's published numerous articles, edited volumes, and books. And her most recent ones, the Forgotten Massacre, Budapest 1944, that came out in 2021, and Invisible Hungarian Perpetrators in the Second World War, that was published in 2020. And Andrea is an honorary doctor of Södertörn University here in Sweden. And in 2018, she was awarded the All European Academics Madame de Staël, am I pronouncing it right? I'm sorry. Prize for Cultural Values. And in 2022, she was awarded the University of Oslo Human Rights Award, an award she received for her defense of academic freedom and institutional autonomy, which is fantastic. And this fall, you are going to be a guest professor at Malmö University, so we hope that we'll meet you again very soon. We are so very happy that you have joined us and that you have traveled far and taken the time to be with us here today and tomorrow, and also for us to have the opportunity to listen to you. And you are going to give a talk with the title Illiberal Memory Politics of War and Violence. And the talk will last for about 45 minutes. And after that, there will be time for questions and comments. So get your pen ready and write it down. And we're really happy that you are here. And the floor is yours. Thank you.
So, can you hear me well? Fantastic. So thank you very much for this generous introduction, and thank you very much for the invitations. You know, when you will be as old as myself, you will see that there are some conferences which are important and there are conferences which are more important. And what makes the difference is actually the people who invited you and who actually care about the topic and care about the people who are participating. So this is one of those conferences, and I'm really grateful for the organizers to be here. So what I would like to do today is first try to move the slide. And, oh,
there we go.
So what did you do?
I just pressed that one.
Okay, fantastic.
But now it's moving.
Why is this moving?
Why is it moving in that direction? No. Sorry.
Close your eyes. Close your eyes.
Yes, am I going back or forth?
You are going forward instead of going back.
Now I'm going back.
Now you're going forward.
This is crazy. I'm so sorry. I feel really.
Close your
eyes. Close your eyes. Now just use them.
This is the end.
This is the end.
My friend,
this is the
end.
So this is
why
very
don't
much.
we do this?
Yes, thank you.
And
a bit more into the technique than I am.
I mean, that's.
I don't know what this says about me.
No. Let's start at the beginning.
Yeah.
That is. Okay.
There we go. And then we want it to be. We're going to start here, and sorry, and sorry, no?
Okay, maybe I should click here. You see this on
Yeah.
here.
This will have to do.
Yeah, so let's try this. No. This. Okay, now I figured out. I'm sorry, thank you. So, first of all, some of you might have signed a petition and supported CEU, and we have lost, right? So, and this kind of failure, sadness, frustration, depression, being defeated, being betrayed, I think that is very much generally a feeling everywhere, and it doesn't look good wherever you see nowadays. And so I would like to just start by saying that, you can learn from the defeat, you can learn from failures. There is always a better story than the present story. And CEU was kicked out from Hungary, gender studies was deleted from the accredited study list by a decree without any consultation, but still, the life goes on. And this sounds like a Coelho quote, but actually this is something which can help in these extremely difficult circumstances to move forward. And so what I would like to talk about is this illiberal memory politics, this term which I coined some decade ago about, so what is this illiberal memory politics? So what is new here? Especially because feminist academics are very often blamed to solve the problems of yesterday successfully instead of looking at the problems of the future. So I would like to suggest us to look at this phenomenon and ask the question, what is new? What is what we have missed? And what is what actually can help us to fight a successful fight? Because it's pretty obvious that this will be long and this will be also bloody. And I'm sorry for using this militarized language, but that's what is happening now. And I would like, in this talk, I would like to talk about what this illiberal memory politics is. Then I would like to give two case studies. One is the memorial of Hanna Senes in Budapest. I will explain you who she was. And then the sexual violence during wartime, the memorial. And then I would like to talk a little bit about possible strategies to survive, and then I will give you a list of readings and some podcasts which I think might be useful for further work. So this is the enigma, right? Because if you are, having coffee with friends in conferences or in other breaks, then you say, I haven't thought that this will happen. It could not be the case, right? And I learned as a partner, as a mother, and as a colleague, not to say, I told you so, but a person who has been working on this far-right politics in the past 30 years, I mean, I am probably the person who is really not surprised what is happening. And at a certain point, you should avoid talking to me in the corridor because I can see even more gloomy scenarios coming. So let's celebrate this moment when we are actually sharing some time together, which is a privilege. And again, thanks for the organizer to make that possible. So here is the argument. So I'm actually arguing that there is a paradigm change in memorialization. And arguing that illiberal states work with mnemonic security, that they are using memory politics for securitized purposes, and gender as symbolic glue. Some of you have read this article with colleagues. We wrote in a socializational fight to move into a new phase, which is neoliberal neo-fascism. This is the term by Eric Russell. So here, the argument is pretty important, saying that securitization, mnemonic politics, and gender politics are all connected in a meaningful way in order to create something new. What is coming, right? And very often, there is this quote about Gramsci, right? That, this is a socializational fight, and when something new is being born, but you don't know what this new is being born, but it will be ugly and horrible, that is what we are seeing now. And the argument is that these three elements, security, the memory politics, and gender, are interconnected constitutively to create this new world order. And I'm also using this concept of unashamed citizens. The concept of unashamed citizens is those who really don't care about shame and behaving like they are expected to behave. And just think about a very simple act in 1789 when the women in Paris decided to go to Versailles, and that's enough. We will go to Versailles and take the king to Paris. And they did it because they did not really care about that. It's not in the memorandum of understanding. This is not in the books. This is not something we used to do. They just did it because they did not care about the concept of shame, right? And the argument here is that these kind of unashamed citizens nowadays are basically ignoring the concept of shame, which is connected to the human rights discourse, and also cannot say bad things about certain concept or certain groups of people, and they are basically ignoring the previous orthodoxies, economy of emotions, and these different social groups have from bottom up successfully challenged the value system, which had been previously seen as unchangeable. So another example is the siege of the Capitol Hill on the 6th of January the year before last year, right? So when all these strangely dressed men and women entered into the Capitol Hill, ignoring that you don't sit on the table, you are not. So, this is the classical example of unashamed citizens. And so what is this problem? And it is connected to one of the orthodoxy of memory studies. The more monuments, the better it is. More research, better it is. More internationalization, the better it is, right? So these kind of very simple connections are basically not working anymore. And these kind of memorials are basically hijacked by the discourses, which are discredit, delegitimize, empty the previous discourses and construct their own version. So we are talking about two parallel tendencies. One is to discredit, delegitimize, empty a certain memory culture, which we can call the European or the global North memory culture, and at the same time create a parallel memory culture, the own version of the past. So these are two different tendencies which are working together. And I'm bringing two examples, right? The Anikó Szenes Memorial and the memorialization of sexual violence in wartime. Yeah. So who is Anikó Szenes? So she was born in an assimilated Jewish family in Budapest, a rich family, and she was a poet and emigrated to Palestine in 1939 and recruited by the British intelligence among others and parachuted to Hungary. The others were parachuted in other German-occupied Europe in order to, and that was a slightly undefined mission, to do what when they arrived as parachuters? To save the Hungarian Jews. That was her mission, which was really undefined, and so she was immediately betrayed, tortured, and executed. And but she became an important person in the Israeli historical canon. Her bones had been transported to Israel, and now she is buried close to Herzl in the Mount Zion, because in 1948 and 1950 the Israeli state needed a kind of cohesion and a kind of hero, and she was one of those. And I don't know if you have seen if you go to any kind of museum in Israel, you can buy these tiny figures. The second one is Herzl, and the first one is Aniko Senesh herself. And her poetry is a part of the Israeli canon, and every secondary and elementary school child is learning her poetry. And, okay, so that's what I have to do. But she is basically not a non-person in Hungary. She has been a non-remembered person for a long time. I just wrote an article about this, so if you are interested, you can read that. But there was a paradigm change, that suddenly everything was about Aniko Senesh. And she was presented as the Wonder Woman. I don't know if you have seen the movie, The Wonder Woman. But Aniko Senesh was a tiny, fragile intellectual who really liked to write her diary. So she was as far as Wonder Woman as me from Marilyn Monroe. So I mean, this is really a kind of far-fetched instrumentalization and politicization of her. And the 100th anniversary in the secondary school where she graduated, you see the other problem, that this white-haired man are remembering to a strong-willed intellectual who was leftist, Zionist, communist, who rebelled against the patriarchal order. So, and it is only getting better. So her memorial is this white thing on the left, which is really unspecific, and it could be the memorial of anybody or anything. So, then they produced a cartoon about this very unfortunate mission. And I mean, it's not that complicated if you read the cartoon, but I would like to underline one element of this cartoon, namely that the perpetrators, they are unspecified. They don't have a military uniform, and you don't know who are these perpetrators, because they were the Hungarian police and the Hungarian military court, right? And that is a taboo which should not be addressed. And there are two memorials which existed before. One, which is a very traditional memorialization, which, you know, there is this saying that nothing more invisible than a memorial. So it's not that important, but this tiny figure, this is that size, right? There is a Ukrainian-born Hungarian artist who is doing these so-called guerrilla statues. And all over in Budapest, there are these tiny little guerrilla statues made of bronze. So if you are getting to this fantastic city, you can book a tour visiting the city and seeing these tiny little statues. And this is in a park. And I was positioning myself strategically and watching what's the reaction, because the other one, you know, they're just ignorable and invisible. But, you know, families stopping, the kids are asking, what is this small thing doing? And then sometimes somebody's putting a scarf on this. So it is a part of the urban landscape, no matter that the urban scientists and artists are saying this is kitsch, this is kitsch. But it actually creates a discussion with the visitors. And that's the big planned memorial. As you see, there is one of these huge housing estates, or komunalka, as you would say. And then they were planning to create this huge painting with Hanna Senesh, who in one of her totally unknown baby photos, when she looks like really chubby. And it looks like an advertisement for a circus, right? But luckily it did not happen, but it's also a kind of intervention. And this is the new memorial, showing her as a parachuter before jumping. And if you just recall the mini statue, it had a personal touch. This looks like a Soviet war memorial or something like that. So and that shows the aesthetics of illiberal memory politics. And the statue is actually erected at the place where she was executed in Budapest, right? So But of course you can say, there is nothing new here. There have been always bad memorials. There have been always men deciding upon, what kind of memorials are being erected. And here is her memorial in 1965. And there's only one woman there, and that's her mother. And this memorial that you see is half-naked woman. I mean, she is expected to be she. And but then the bones were already transported to Israel, so this is an empty grave with the statue, and the statue was exported to Israel in 2006, I think. But still, you can say there is nothing new. However, I would like to argue that there is something new here. So, what is new here? So, because the argument is that this kind of illiberal memory politics is producing something new because of the modus operandi, how it operates, not because of the content, not because of the theoretical grounding, but because of the modus operandi. So what we see here is the infantilization of strong women, the aestheticization of the hero. There is not about the knowledge. There are parallel institutions which were set up in the illiberal memory politics, like this infamous House of Fate. So if you want to know more about this, just Google. There is the displacement of memory. Just think about Hannah Senesh as a circus girl in a chubby baby photo with the circus. There is no consultation with the stakeholders. So, I mean, these monuments and these plans, these cartoons, these memorials are just springing up like Athena from the head of Zeus without any consultation with anybody. All male panels, masculinization of the whole memory culture, ignoring the community of remembrance, because, in Budapest there is the second largest Jewish community in Europe. No communication at all. Appointing experts instead of training them. So there are several experts who have been interviewed and these people, right? So then it's basically about loyalty, hijacking the academic quality assurance system. So somebody shows up and says, I'm a professor. Who are you, right? What kind of measurement you are a professor? And also, this illiberal hijacking includes buying higher educational institutions and transforming them into entry points. So, as a Russian oligarch bought in Bremen this Jakobs University, the Hungarian government bought a university in Vienna. So they are also, trying to expand their influence via these institutions. And they are hijacking the shame and trauma narrative, and they are presenting it through by these unashamed citizens. And don't forget that the Holocaust memorialization has been always a top-down process, right? So think about the institutionalization, and we are here in Sweden, and the Stockholm Declaration and the starting of the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance have been always a top-down effect. So what we see now is the hijacking of this top-down process, plus eliminating any kind of alternative discussions. And this is what we call the populist term, or the unashamed citizens hijacking what is there, plus creating something new. So what is this? What is happening? So in the political science and also in sociology, you should come up with the terminology, and then you are quoted a lot, and then your academic career is safe because you have got enough quotes. So there are lots of explanations. One is that's a backlash. I'm against this because there has been no good old times. Some of the colleagues are saying this is authoritarianism and bringing the historical analogies of the Nazi Germany, Soviet Union, or the communist bloc. I also think it's too cheap. And then there is this illiberal takeover, which I'm actually arguing strongly for, which is a paradigm change. And there are several, there is this huge literature about in political science and also in sociology. Is this a mafia state? Is it a hybrid state? Is it an autocratic legalist state? Is it constitutional authoritarianism? Is it electoral authoritarianism? Is it state capture? I mean, these are all different concepts which somebody could bring forward and have all the quotations. And in the case of the Holocaust remembrance, there are basically two discussions. One is the Holocaust distortion. So what is happening today is a Holocaust distortion. And this, if you are going to any kind of international document, the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance or the European Holocaust Remembrance, they are using this concept Holocaust distortion. And here you find the definition of the Holocaust distortion, downplaying the role of collaborators. Think about the cartoon which you have seen. The complicity of many ordinary people are not mentioned. And there is also the revisionism. So Holocaust revisionism is a kind of major crime, but I'm actually arguing that there are, based on Tucker's terminology, that there are three types of revisionisms. One is the significance-driven, the evidence-driven, and the value-driven. And what we see nowadays is a value-driven revisionism of the Holocaust narrative because of the unashamed citizens who are no longer ashamed of being complicit with the Nazi crimes, who are no longer ashamed of being collaborators with the Nazi Germany, and they are creating a new narrative. And this is our contribution with Veronika Przewalska. We are coming up with this concept of the illiberal democracy exploitation, that exploiting, instrumentalizing the existing democracy, the structures, institutions, ideas, and build something new. And this is the new conceptual framework which I would like to present here, which is this illiberal polypore state. The concept of the, before you start Googling, this polypore is this mushroom which lives on the trunk of the tree and takes the energy and the ideas from the tree. And it has got three modus operandi. One is the building the parallel institutions. The second is hijacking the money, right? This is basically a money generating activity. And the third one is it's driven by illiberal pragmatism. Anything goes. And this also makes really difficult to catch this. Because, I mean, academics and the previous system, we were trained to even die for some ideas. Think about Spinoza, think about Galilei, think about Madame Curie. I mean, they were really fighting for certain ideas. But here, illiberal pragmatism is really not about the meaning. This is not about the content. This is not about the value. This is about the modus operandi, and to take it, instrumentalize, hijack everything which is there. So the argument here is with black, no distortion, revisionism, but a paradigm change. The illiberal polypore state with a mnemonic security creates a new truth for the unashamed citizens. And it is done in the field of memory politics, right? And here is the second example. And I would like to create this bridge. And this is the history of the rapes committed during the Second World War by the Red Army. And I have the book in German, and I have got the book in Russian, because I believe that this is important to have a book in Russian. So I've worked a lot, and lots of colleagues work a lot on this to have this book out. And maybe for those who don't really know this, in the past years there is a law in Russia which is creating labeling as a crime to make any kind of negative comments about the Red Army and also about different histories of the Second World War. So when I was going around in Moscow with this manuscript some years ago, they looked at me if I were offering some very forbidden goods, even the most liberal publishers. But it was published by this IBDM, so that's good. So again, what is this illiberal term? First, there is this her story term. there is this orthodoxy in feminist history. Let's make women visible. Women are just appendix of history. Women should be included because they haven't been included. And this kind of orthodoxy is actually read and followed by the liberal forces. So they are inviting and including lots of women into this new canon. So if you are going into the bookshops in Turkey, in Russia, in Poland, in Hungary, which are run by these illiberal governments, then you see that there are tons of books which are about women who are suffering, who are sacrificing themselves for the nation. So there is this first story turn. And the other side of the coin is that feminist criticism is really not finding the tools and the theoretical tools to counteract this. Also, populists turn in choosing topics. Choosing those who hadn't been visible, because they are using the same logic as the feminist scholarship, and sexual violence during wartime actually fits here, and then looking for the authentic stories, the real people. Let's talk to the real people and not on this artificial topics. The illiberal memory politics works on this double victimhood, namely that Eastern Europe was occupied by the Germans and then the Soviets, so everybody was suffering and nobody is responsible for anything. And this is what Timothy Snyder called the bloodlands, and this concept of bloodlands very much contributed to this myth of this double victimhood, which is basically makes invisible the collaboration, hijacking the shame and trauma narrative by the unashamed citizens, and standardizes testimonies as history. So that I find really important in the liberal memory politics, that testimonies and what people are actually telling to you becomes the truth as history. So basically, historian as a profession is disappearing like a bubble, because you can just ask the person, and that's the history. You don't need anybody who is narrativizing and contextualizing that story, partly because they cannot control those who are actually creating this narrative. So, what about the illiberal memory politics and sexual violence? So this is, of course, the anti-communist framework, and there is nothing new here. The whole post-1989 Eastern Europe was based on the anti-communist framework, that is the legitimacy of the political system. And what is new is that from silence, not to talk about, because obviously that the Red Army was stationing in Hungary or in Poland or in the eastern part of Germany, there was really not advisable to talk about the massive sexual violence which was committed by the Red Army soldiers during 44 and 45. And now there is a new framework, sacrifice. So women are sacrificing themselves for the Polish nation, for the Hungarian nation. They took this Asian barbaric attack on their body. And interestingly, there is not really a feminist intervention into this narrative, partly because the discussion about domestic violence and violence against women is not connected to the historical stories. So the continuity of violence, what Cynthia Anglo was so importantly underlined, was basically missing from this discussion. So I would like to draw your attention to this article we wrote with a colleague of mine. We looked at how the abortion regulation in Hungary in the 20th century had been informed by sexual violence. And of course the gynecological lobby, because of course they were making a lot of money on the women's bodies. So, those who don't know about what she's talking about, what kind of war, what kind of violence, Red Army, what is this? So, just a 2-minute discussion about what happened in Hungary. So, the German occupation happened on the 19th of March 1944 because Hungary was an ally of Nazi Germany. And then the Soviet army was liberating, it was an ally of Nazi Germany. And then this kind of German occupation saved women from the German sexual violence. because Hungary was an ally of Germany, so the German army was not roaming around, and they were not behaving like they were behaving in the former Soviet Union. And then the mass violence of the Red Army, which was coming from the east, between 80 and 800,000. The numbers are floating around. Interestingly, the Jewish victims have been double silenced in this story. And then from the illiberal memory turn around 2000, there is this double victimhood story, which is creating a market for stories of brutality about the Red Army, which makes it really interesting because the Hungarian government is a strong ally of Putin's Russia. So how to solve this problem? And when the Russians attacked Ukraine, there was, of course, another story opening up, which if you have got questions, I'm happy to talk about this. And then, so basically the discussion had changed from 1945, where there was silence, this kind of cold memory. Now it is becoming a hot memory. And the church sources were, because what happened in a village when the Red Army came in? There were lots of rapes, they consumed all the alcohol, they took all the horses, and they were eaten everything. What happened? They went to the local priest. And the local priest wrote a letter, and those letters were sent to the superiors, and then they kept those files. And these files now are available, and among others I also use these files, and this is the martyrdom story, and they are totally differentiating this story from the history of the Holocaust, which is really interesting. And they are using the rape as a weapon of war narrative. In the war, everything is different. The periodization is different because the political history for 1945, 1956, 1989, this doesn't really fit to the narrative and the stories which have been told by these survivors. And who is telling the story? Men are taking the lead, and men are telling the stories. And some women actually took the stand not to tell the story as a form of resistance. And the debate between intentionalist and structuralist debate is also happening here. The Russians always wanted to rape Hungarian women. This is one. And the other one, which is saying structurally every war is the rape is a weapon of war. So these two narratives are present, and also talking about sexual violence is always simplification, because man rapes a woman, man rapes a man. So in a sense, it's a subject-object relationship. It's very simplified. And very often it's only the penetrative violence which is discussed and not the other aspects of violence. And I would like to talk about the visualization, right? So I was talking about how the illiberal memory politics is hijacking the memory of sexual violence during wartime. And then, what is this in the Hungarian context? Because you might not really know the context. And now I would like to talk about the visualization, and I would like to mention that there will be some horrible pictures shown, so be ready for that. So the visual information we have about sexual violence from wartime is coming from testimonies. We don't have photos. We don't have visual material. We have testimonies. And that influences how this visualization is happening. And these kind of selected victims are returning in this, that some stories are important, some of the other stories is not important. So the unashamed citizens, their stories are important, but the story of the Jewish victims is not really important. And this kind of re-ethnicization and selectivity of the stories actually led to the municipal of Budapest to create this memorial, which is expected to be a counter-strategy to this illiberal turn, to create this memorial, and to fight really about the root causes of this illiberal turn, and not letting taken by the illiberal forces. So this is the film, The Silent Shame, which you can watch on YouTube with Russian and English subtitles, which is about the sexual violence during the Second World War in Hungary. And that was a game changer. In a sense, this is 2012 or 13, because this movie was financed by the government, and every secondary school received a CD, so they are actually showing this film during the Memorial Day of the saints of the communism, or what is the name of this Memorial Day. And also on YouTube channel, there are more than, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of views. And this film actually changed the whole narrative. My first article about this topic was in 1997. And you know, that's what you think. I write an article and the whole discussion will change. No, it is not. But this film actually changed the whole narrative towards the sacrifice. And women are not telling about themselves, but they saw it. And the men are telling all these stories. So it's a really interesting movie. And if you think about this memorial, which is the classical example of an illiberal memorial, which was parachuted during night by helicopters. Nobody knew about this, and then suddenly they dropped it in close to the parliament, in the Liberty Square, if you know Hungary a little bit, or Budapest. And then you see the innocent Archangel Gabriel representing Hungary, and then the evilish German eagle, which is just crushing on this Gabriel. And of course, that's representing the German occupation, and of course the Soviet occupation doesn't have a memorial, right? So again, you know, there is this absence, right? And there are several memorials before this Budapest memorial, like this memorial in Csongrád, which is at the south of Hungary, and you see a naked woman who is attacked by these hands, and this quote from the Revelations. And if I would not have told you that this is a memorial of the sexual violence during wartime, you would not know this. And probably that's the reason why it still exists. Because it has this coded language, this religious coded language, which fits into the liberal memory politics and fits into the pro-Putin beliefs of the Hungarian government. And there is this other memorial, which was erected by this gentleman who is smiling there, and then you see only men standing and at the erecting the memorial, and this is for the victims of communist dictatorship and refugees. And if I would not tell you that the mother of this person was captured by the Red Army and raped, and he erected this memorial like 2019, you would not know this. So there is this meta language of the liberal memory politics. Nothing is what you see is this, right? So this is this proxy narrative. Think about illiberal pragmatism. So you are fighting to put this memorial up because this is an important. No, you are pragmatists. You are just, you know, making this very differently. And then in Budapest we had this competition of the memorials. Sorry for the misspell for the municipal. It was bipartisan, which was unheard of, but we managed to do that. It was an international bid. And then there was a professional and civil dialogue. We have a book where the different scholars were talking about the psychological, art history, whatever aspects of this topic. It was bottom up because it was also collecting testimonies, and we were hoping that this will be an alternative to illiberal memory politics. So what I would like to show to you now is there were 36 bids for this memorial. I will show you the 6 which was selected by the international jury, which was led by James Young. And then I will ask you to vote. Which one would you like to see erected in Budapest? And then I will tell you which one was selected by the jury. And then there was an internet site which ran a poll with more than 20,000 people voting, and then I will tell you what was the reaction there, right? So ready? Let's see this. So the site of the place is in a Buddha site, and this was bombed during the Second World War. You see the two trees, right? And this is it's not a big site like, you know, this site of the, it's smaller than this, right, till the wall. And so this is not a big site. This was a house which was bombed during the Second World War, which I think is actually very fitting. So the first was the memory of rapes in war times. And then you see the two trees, and it's a walking, you walk into this small corridor where you read text and you think about it. So what is that? Retaining the wall, and it's a visitor enters into a corridor-like space. It can be a place of retreat and mourning. An important element of the work is the garden of healing and the combination of text fragments referring to trauma. So this is one. So, memory of rapes in wartime. The second one is swept under the carpet. Again, this is the same site. And then you see in the center, there is a night ground, a white night ground with blood stains and whatever. And then it's a spectacle becomes a witness, and there is no evocation without immersion. So the witness, the visitor actually walks in, and there is this blood-stained nightgown or female dress, and then there is this garden of healing, the swept under the carpet. And then there is the message in the bottle, that is in the Danube. They plan to have it in the Danube, and then this is going up and going down, and you can put small stories and letters into that hole, and there is a place where you can put stories into that particular hole. And then the caryatids, there is a quote from the book of Ecclesiastes about violence and suffering, and then this is also in the same space, and then you see the caryatids which are carrying this huge thing, and the story and the text is at the bottom of the of this huge cube. So these are the caryatids. Then there is the silence, where this is a garden, and then a story from Ovid's Metamorphoses, 25 raised beds, and there are porcelain figurines of nightingales, because the Ovid story is about the nightingale, how the nightingale is a symbol of hope. And then the participants can actually write on those nightingales and put into the flower beds. And the last one is the broken silence. So this is again the same space. You see the trees, and that is a concentric circular arc enclosed a hemisphere emerging from the ground, which represents the dark side of the moon. And this is moving, this thing, which is this moon circle, and then you hear, according to the movement, a choir, a polyphonic choir, right? So let's go again, and please make your mind, you have got one choices, so this is serious. So memory of the rapes, just think about this. And then we have the swept under the carpet, we have the caryatids, we have the broken silence, we have, no, please stop. And we have the broken silence, right? So let's see who is voting for the first one, the memory rape in the war times. Hands up. One, okay? Good. Then the next one is swept under the carpet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay? Right. This is the message in the bottle. 1, 2, 3. Okay? Caryatids. 1, 2. Okay? Then the silenced. Okay? And then the broken silence. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so I mean, this is not that bad, but the jury actually selected the first one, which nobody voted for. The memory of rape in war times. The second was the swept under the carpet, and the third one is the message in the bottle. And in the popular vote, the swept under the carpet, which is this night ground story. And then there were the caryatids, and then there was the broken science. And 7% got the memory of the rapes, right? So what are the consequences here, right? So, I mean, the religious framework of martyrdom, I mean, all the stories except Ovidius are from the Bible. I mean, what is this, right? And then this kind of freedom fighter rhetoric, securitization, the anti-intellectualism, closing the painful chapter and to move on, and the emergence of the appointed new experts. It's a good business, and it's also a threat to conservatism because it's basically about the new allies, the remasculinization. Half of the contributors were men. Self-censorship and double speech. I mean, these are the characteristics of the illiberal memory politics. And this kind of story, what we try to tell with this memorial, it turned to be a non-story, right? Because, I mean, James Young understood it, but nobody else. The question is, why do you make them memorials? So, I promised you something to get out from this, right? So, I mean, in this talk, what I was arguing is that there is a change in memorialization because of the illiberal intervention, which is specific because of the way, the modus operandi, how this illiberal memory politics works, and because of the intentions of this illiberal memory politics. It is not about never again. This is not about values. This is not about preserving, but preserving and keeping their position and possibly getting as much money as possible through the networks which they are actually running. And and through illiberal pragmatism. Anything goes, really anything goes. And this kind of story which I was presenting to you about the Hanna Szenes Memorial, it's really a success as far as the illiberal memory politics is concerned. The counter-narrative, which is the memorial of the rapes committed by the Red Army soldiers in Hungary, I'm not sure it's a success. By the way, it still doesn't exist, the memorial, and I'm happy to tell you the story why it doesn't. And there will be election in 5 weeks, so we will see what happens. And so what can we do? And I'm bringing in this, I started like a Coelho fan, right? So, you know, but I would like to continue to take this risky path and bring in Adam Grant, who's about this thing again, because he was arguing about unlearning and unthinking what we know. And basically giving a space for us for new ideas and new discussions. And that's what I think is really needed at the moment, to take one step back and forget what we know and to look at, you know, what is what we see. Because very often we believe we know what we see. This is the women's movement, this is an anti-gender movement. No. This is more complicated than that, because illiberal politics works with proxies, works with this kind of illiberal pragmatism, creates this showcase. Behind that, important things are happening, what we don't see, because we are engaged with this fight against these proxies. And maybe, you know, if we take one step back and ignore those proxies, we will have a totally different insight. So let me also show you this sleepwalking podcast series, which we did with very nice colleagues. You can find it in the CEU podcast library and also in the Johannesburg Holocaust and Genocide Center, because we were arguing that this is exactly the sleepwalking. I don't know, I'm sure you know this metaphor came back because sleepwalking was the main reason why some historians argue the First World War broke out, because of the elite failure, because they did not see what was actually happening. And we have got episodes about dangerous science, dangerous women, dangerous education, dangerous women. So I mean, looking at how the liberals are actually instrumentalizing concepts which are out there and making it a danger. And not all science is good, not all education is good, because this is instrumentalized. And then we started this standing up series. We are interviewing people who actually stand up so against taking over, illiberal takeover. So if you want inspiration, listen to this men and women who are giving these talks. And here is the reference list which I promised to you. So if you are interested to read more about what I have been presenting, please, these are all open access. If not, this is on my academia page. And thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Okay, I think you can actually hear me if I'm, yes. Where's this not? Oh, okay, never mind. So now we open the floor for questions and comments for Andrea. And first of all, thank you very, very much for a super inspirational talk. I myself have learned some notes, but I will leave the floor to the rest. And yeah. Who wants to go first? Yes, Almira.
Yes, I also would like to thank Andrea. It was actually a brilliant talk, and there's so many things to think about. I have one question, very simple. I noticed among the projects for the monument which you showed, almost all of them were proposed by women. I don't know, either as curators or sculptors, maybe just one of them was by men artists. And I don't know, is there anything behind this, any kind of specific situation in the contemporary art that women are so active and so actively participating in these competitions?
I would say that I don't know the answer because I'm not an expert in art, but there were several colleagues, these were groups which were participating in it, and there were also men behind that. So, for example, this lunar circle story that was by men, but maybe this is the moment when it's really not important. What is important, I think, is the lack of the original ideas independently, if it is not coming from men and not coming from women. So, this was the only open bid in the Hungarian art scene in the past 10 years. Because the illiberal government, if you go to Budapest, you will see that, I made a mistake in my life and I was choosing a profession. I should have become a sculpture maker, because the whole city is full of this Hanna Szenes type of bronze statues. So that's a big business, and but they are not open calls for that. They are just, the friend of a friend is inviting you to make a statue. And this was the first open call, and that's why I was particularly unhappy with this intellectual product, because we worked like a dog to prepare it. So we had a lecture series, we had a podcast series. So if you go to the website, from Aleida Assmann to Michael Rothberg, we interviewed so many people, hoping that this will be an inspiration, this will get new ideas, whatever, and that's what we got, right? And particularly the fact that this was selected, and wherever I'm using this as a case study, and I did this. I gave a talk at the University of Vienna, where it was like a auditorium full of 200 students. Nobody voted for it. There's just one or two hands from the 200 for this, which will be allegedly being built. So it's not an answer for your question, but I think that at a certain point, the academic community and also the artistic community unlearns to act professionally. So in a sense, the fact that there are no tests